Hello everybody, this is just a quick video to give folks a sense of some of the news sources that are available and out there for them to try to make sense of the extremely complicated and getting more complicated world of ours. So the first screen you're seeing here, this is a Google Doc of what I'm calling reliable sources, which is to say these are news sources and sites of commentary and culture that I think are meet certain standards of reliability and good faithedness in their overall approach. I certainly wouldn't endorse everything that appears on all of them, but these are all good avenues for good information. Plenty of these are sites I read myself on a regular basis, and actually that's sort of what I want to point folks toward, are some of the sources that I think are useful for everyone to make part of their daily news diet, however you want to put it, as well as some more particular ones that I just want to throw out there and suggest to folks. Okay, so starting with what I would call newspapers of record. Broadly speaking, in the US, there are three major papers of record that more or less set the standard for methods of journalism and ability to drive the news agenda. And that would be the New York Times, the Wall Street Journal, and the Washington Post. When it comes to thinking about the slant these papers have, I think it should go without saying that pretty much all news has a slant of one sort or another. One reason why these three papers, I think, are very useful is that there remains a pretty strong firewall between the news side of things and the opinion side of things that you see on the editorial page, etc. For instance, the Wall Street Journal has a very right-wing editorial page. That point of view is not reflected in their news coverage, which is quite strong. The New York Times tends more toward the sort of centrist liberal opinion on their editorial pages. Again, their news is very good. Now, that's not to say, obviously, that the way stories are presented, the way language is deployed, what have you, doesn't mean there isn't bias in the stories as well. But I just do want to suggest to people that these are all news sources you can read on a daily basis that will reliably inform you about the basic outline of events that are going on. Now, obviously, when it comes to, say, the New York Times or the Wall Street Journal, you can access these both online. As Brooklyn College students, you have the ability to get past the firewalls for the New York Times and the Wall Street Journal. If you go to the Brooklyn College website and you go to the database part of the Brooklyn College website, it'll be Find Materials on the main page. It'll bring you to this list of databases. If you click on the letter N, come down here. Among other things, the Nation magazine archive is available. National Newspaper Index, you can follow this link to instantly access all sorts of newspaper headlines, not just limited to the New York Times and the Wall Street Journal, but newspapers around the world. And I shouldn't even say headlines. What I mean to say is full access. There are particular access points, I think somewhere here. Where is it? Yes, for the New York Times digital edition, you can reach that directly from there. You can do the same thing with the Wall Street Journal. In any case, just take advantage of the fact that as Brooklyn College students, you can access these papers directly. If they're new to you, when you go and use the New York Times website or the Wall Street Journal website, they have options for you where you can get like daily headlines in your email, that sort of thing, which some people find useful, etc. So yeah, those papers. I also include the Financial Times. That's a paper that is published in London and primarily deals with economic news, sort of like the Wall Street Journal, but even more so. But that being said, it's a really important newspaper of record, and if you're at all interested in the world of business, and particularly how that intersects with politics, I would highly recommend checking out the Financial Times. One other thing that I do that I think is a really good idea is that I follow the major news agencies, in particular the Associated Press and Reuters. So these are global organizations that aggregate news from around the world, from networks of stringers they have on the ground. A large amount of the news you read on various websites or news that is vetted on social media ultimately derives from stories that are put together by the Associated Press or Reuters. They are free to access. There are no paywalls here. and they essentially function like, they're indistinguishable from another online newspaper, but they're really good sources of up-to-date, very reliable news. So yeah, I'm a big fan of them. I'm a big fan of the AP in particular. There's a lot you can learn from covering uh, yeah, stuff on the AP. That's, yeah, something I recommend. Okay. Otherwise, what else did I want to say? Yes, I think everything on here is useful in its own way, but I just really want to highlight a couple of the sites featured under investigators and watchdogs. By that I mean this is where I put organizations that are doing journalism in a nonprofit context. One of the most important facts to know about American media and to know about the news you consume before you consume it is that it's virtually always being created by for-profit companies, which is to say the New York Times and the Wall Street Journal and certainly Fox News and MSNBC and CNN are companies that exist to make money for their shareholders. And in ways both obvious and subtle, that impacts the kind of news they present, the way they present it, etc. So one thing that I think is hugely important in American journalism is to focus on the extremely high quality work being done by nonprofit organizations that are dedicated to good old-fashioned investigative reporting. Uh, I think the gold standard here is ProPublica. Uh, this is the front page of their website. This is, again, just the gold standard for investigative news in the muckraking tradition, which is to say, good quality journalism that is on the lookout for public and private corruption and abuses of public trust. I can't recommend this site enough. I can say the same about OpenSecrets.org, which devotes itself to prying back the many veiled curtains of American politics to uncover just where the networks of money that really make things function are operating. They do extremely good work, as does the Center for Public Integrity. Again, just a first-rate source of journalism in the public interest as opposed to being done for profit. So yeah, one last couple of points. I am not a big fan of people getting their news from YouTube and sources like that, even though I recognize that often having it presented visually is much more appealing than reading it. Uh, for my entire life, the gold standard for TV news journalism and like TV news documentaries that go really in depth on important issues is Frontline, which is a long-running show on PBS. Because it's on PBS, you generally have pretty broad access to it. In fact, I think it's also accessible through the Brooklyn College website. But their documentaries are absolutely first-rate, and they go back decades. And I just recommend them all. These are just some of the best TV or broadcast journalism being done, and frankly, vastly superior to virtually anything you'll find from more amateur sources of journalism. Not that there's anything wrong with that, but it needs a more solid foundation before you're going to go digging into that. Finally, also just one site in particular that I've been reading since I was an undergrad that I think does a really good job of digesting and presenting accessible political news from a centrist liberal perspective is politicalwire.com. They have a subscription account, but you're really not missing anything if you don't sign up for that. But it's this guy, Tegan Goddard, who's worked in politics forever. He does a really good job of aggregating up-to-date political news. So especially if you're interested in the election when it comes to polling data, up-to-the-minute sort of stuff, this is a really good way to follow political news, and this is pretty much the site, politically speaking, that I check repeatedly over the course of the day, as opposed to other news sites that I maybe sit down with for a chunk of time in the morning, afternoon, what have you. In any case, like I said, I will share this video through the YouTube page. I will send the link out to everyone via an email. Hope you check this out. Any and all questions you have about this or would like to dig into it more, that is certainly open season for us to talk about in class, because I'm sure there's plenty I've forgotten. So please don't hesitate to bring those questions up, and I will talk to you guys all soon. Thanks very much. Bye.